dream. One day, this nation will rise up, live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.
Black Men Thinkin.
Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. The only way they can inherit the freedom we have known is if we fight for it, protect it, defend it, and then hand it to them with the well-taught lessons of how they in their lifetime must do the same.
Black Men Thinkin.
Anytime you throw your weight behind a political party that controls 2/3 of the government, and that party can't keep the promise that it made to you during election time, and you are dumb enough to walk around continuing to identify yourself with that party, you're not only a chump, but you're a traitor to your race.
Black Men Thinkin.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. And this idea that government is beholden to the people, that it has no other source of power except the sovereign people, is still the newest and the most unique idea in all the long history of man's relation to man. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Black Men Thinkin.
In this present crisis, government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem.
Black Men Thinkin.
Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinking, here on the dominant force of Internet conservatism, TalkAmericaRadio.us. Also WVDQ, Talk 92.1 FM in Valdosta, Georgia, WJHC, Talk 107.5 in North Florida, FreedomInAmericaRadio.com, and WLBB News Talk, AM 1330 in Carrollton, Georgia. Well, we are now into the month of October, and we're going to talk a little bit. Actually, I think the entire theme of the show is what I call Trump, Master and Commander. Donald Trump, like no politician I have seen in my lifetime, and definitely like no president that I've seen in my lifetime, has dominated the news cycle, dominated the national agenda, not by leading the American people so much as following the principles to which they already adhere. And everywhere Donald Trump turns his tweet megaphone, the results are both predictable and affirmed by the American people. For example, I believe it was at the second to last, I think the 22nd of September, before the special election in Alabama, Donald Trump went down to Alabama to hold a campaign rally on behalf of, I believe his name is Luther Strange, who eventually lost to Judge Roy Moore. And he addressed the matter of the NFL anthem protest, basically saying if they don't stand, then they should fire the SOBs. And that got a lot of reaction throughout. Almost immediately, people were outraged. And examples kind of like this one right here.
Time for an up-to-the-minute update presented by Verizon. At a political rally last night, President Donald Trump turned his attention to the National Football League, criticizing the game on the field in efforts to make it safer, while also calling for players who protest during the national anthem to be fired. Commissioner Roger Goodell released a statement. Today it says this: the NFL and our players are at our best when we help create a sense of unity in our country and our culture. There is no better example than the amazing response from our clubs and players to the terrible natural disasters we've experienced over the last month. Divisive comments like these demonstrate an unfortunate lack of respect for the NFL, our great game, and all of our players, and a failure to understand the overwhelming force for good our clubs and players represent in our communities. Giants owners John Mara and Steve Tisch released the following statement, quote, comments like we heard last night from the president are inappropriate, offensive, and divisive. We are proud of our players, the vast majority of whom use their NFL platform to make positive differences in our society. Also releasing a statement, Dolphins owner and founder of the Ross Initiative in Sports for Equality, that's Stephen Ross, saying, quote, "Our country needs unifying leadership right now, not more divisiveness. We need to seek to understand each other and have civil discourse instead of condemnation and sound bites. I know our players who kneeled for the anthem, and these are smart young men of character who want to make our world a better place for everyone. They wanted to start a conversation and are making a difference in our community, including working with law enforcement to bring people together. We can all benefit from learning and listening and respecting each other. Sports is a common denominator in our world. We all have the responsibility to use this platform to promote understanding, respect, and equality." This has been an up-to-the-minute update presented by Verizon.
And that was one ridiculously rejected statement by the American people. Because right after that, that was the Saturday after Donald Trump made his remarks, and then people went out, the teams that is, went out and protested, taking a knee, calling it being united. In fact, one team, the Baltimore Ravens, went so far as to go to London, and amazingly, they stood in London for the playing of the British national anthem, God Save the Queen, and then took a knee while the Star Spangled Banner, their national anthem, was played. Wow. Well, they got back home, and the truth of the matter is this past weekend, first weekend in October, last weekend of September, a combination of the two, fans booing, and you find that all over the page. NFL fans booed players for kneeling before national anthem. Now, this is what they did. After that first weekend, after Trump made his comments, they went out and they got booed. Here in the United States, they got booed. And the Ravens took that clown show on the road and got and probably bewildered half of the folks in London. Why would you do this? But back here, they were getting booed. Now, this past weekend, of course, the NFL players tried to split the difference. You had Drew Brees calling for unity. You had Aaron Rodgers of Green Bay saying the fans should lock arms in the stands. They rejected that nonsense by and large. All this, and now you had people trying to split the difference. Well, we'll kneel, but we won't kneel during the national anthem. Or some of us will kneel, some of us will stand. You saw people starting to get up off their knees after the American public sided with Donald Trump. As a matter of fact, when the Ravens got back today, they decided, we're not going to kneel during the national anthem. We're going to have a short prayer, and we're going to kneel after that. And here's how the fans responded to this. Well, we're not kneeling to the anthem, but we are going to take a knee thing. Yeah, thank you. They had a prayer, short prayer, recognized that they were getting trashed back here for what they did in London. So they come back here and say, well, you know what? They just don't know. They are doing the same thing that Barack Obama told everybody after they trashed healthcare. Well, the problem is you really don't understand. We're not communicating well enough what it is we're doing. If you guys would just make a better effort to understand what we're about, then you'd think this was a good thing. Yeah, that didn't work, did it? Obamacare is exactly what people thought it was, and it's tearing up the country. And guess what? The American people aren't stupid about what you're doing either. It's not about the national anthem. It's not about the flag. Then stay on your feet when the national anthem and flag. Well, we're on our feet now. Too late. You drag this into here. What you need to do is make it go away. Stand on your feet. Now, after last weekend, after Trump made his initial comments, and you heard all the the commissioner and owners saying, we stand with our players, we stand with our players. All of a sudden now the players have to get in a earful of what the fans have to think, and watching the ratings go down and the stadiums become more empty. For example, in Los Angeles, the Chargers, formerly of San Diego, who currently play in the smallest capacity NFL stadium, are now putting up covers, tarps, effectively, over the upper tier of the stadium because they ain't selling those seats. And of course, the Chargers aren't necessarily the best team, but by the same token, it's only 30,000 seats, and they're covering up the upper deck. Interestingly, what we now hear from the owners and from the commissioner of the NFL sounds a lot like this. For those who are not aware, Donald Trump is effectively the commissioner of the NFL at this time. No one's heard from Roger Goodell. After 2 weekends of booing and watching his ratings tank, watching his stadiums not be as full as they once were, he doesn't know what to say. Donald Trump is not even done yet. He is reloading and firing hard, praising those who stand, continuing to go after those who do not. And the American people have responded. We have people burning season tickets, burning different paraphernalia, posting videos all over social media, expressing their absolute disdain, and in the way that matters most, they're doing things that are making sponsors say, let me see if I really want to be with this. Because the American people are not happy. Donald Trump stepped into a firestorm, but he stepped in on the side of the American people. And that's why he's not the one getting the backlash from anyone other than progressives who do not represent anywhere near the majority of Americans. Are we clear? We should be. Now, another interesting thing, over in the NBA, you might remember LeBron James has been talking a lot of smack. Trump is a bum. Trump is that guy. Steph Curry has been talking about how he didn't know if he wanted to go to the White House, and Donald Trump rescinded the invitation. And, well, he said he didn't want to go. Well, he didn't have to worry about going now. Donald Trump said, you're not invited. I don't want to see you at the White House. And so the commissioner of the NBA made it very clear that he intends to take a different track with his league than has the NFL.
It's disheartening to me to see so much disunity in our society. I think that sports historically, and in the NBA in particular, has been a unifying force. And while there's always been disagreements in society, sports arenas have been places where people from all walks of life have come together and for a common experience. And when it comes to political disagreements, I would hope that we, the league, together with our players, can play a constructive role in bringing people together. As Coach Popovich said the other day, people need to engage and have these discussions, and they're not always easy discussions to have. Sometimes they are painful discussions, but they need to be had. And I'm hoping, once again, that this league can play a constructive role there on, the anthem. And specifically, we have a rule that requires our players to stand for the anthem. It's been our rule as long as I've been involved with the league, and my expectation is that our players will continue to stand for the anthem.
Now, when asked if there would be a penalty if a player or team were to violate that rule, Silver said, "All I can say is if that were to happen, we'll deal with it when it happens." Translation: I'm not going to get Goodelled. Donald Trump ain't going to run my league. I'll deal with it. I've already figured out where the American people stand on this. All our talk about unity, they're not seeing it from us in what we do. So I'll deal with this. I'm not going to let Donald Trump treat me like Roger Goodell, whom we've not heard anything from for quite some time. And don't forget, going back to Goodell, remember, Michael Bennett has been shown a liar, the one who said that he was mistreated by police in Las Vegas. They got him on tape, and nothing he's saying is panning out. They mistreated him, they cursed at him, they did all this. They got video, and none of what he's saying is panning out. But remember, when the Las Vegas police asked the NFL to investigate independently, Roger Goodell was on record saying Michael Bennett represents the best in our league. So the best one in your league, among the best in your league, doesn't respect the flag, doesn't respect the national anthem, and lies about police. Donald Trump was dead right on this. And the American people have responded that he was dead right. It's not even about Trump. You want America to change, then you respect who America is and you ask for change. You don't disrespect who America is and then expect her to kowtow to your political butthurt. It doesn't work that way. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinkin', will be back right after this. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinking, here on the dominant force in internet conservatism, TalkAmericaRadio.us, also WDDQ, Talk 92.1 FM in Valdosta, Georgia, WJHC, Talk 107.5 in North Florida, FreedomInAmericaRadio.com, and WLBB News Talk AM 1330 in Carrollton, Georgia. Continuing with the theme of Trump, Master and Commander, let's turn attention now to hurricane response or disaster response. As everyone is aware, major hurricanes have hit different parts of the United States. Hurricane Harvey played havoc in Texas, doing particularly big damage in Houston. Hurricane Irma wreaked havoc throughout the Florida Keys and South Florida, really doing a number on Miami. The next two, Jose and I don't know what K was, seemed to miss the United States at least. But Hurricane Maria came by and, as a Category 5 storm, hit Puerto Rico head on and just wore it out. Okay, but let's back up here, because the common denominator here is going to be the response of the Trump administration to these multiple challenges, and then what is the reaction to those who are receiving whatever it is the Trump administration is giving out. Let's go to Texas and hear from the governor of that state.
Such a warm welcome on his ride over here, showing the gratitude that we all have for the president. I want to express my deep gratitude to the president, for him and his entire cabinet and staff for what they have done over the past couple of weeks. A lot of people see what happens in front of the camera. I want to reveal in just 1 minute what's been going on behind the scenes, behind the camera for the past 2 weeks. About 10 days in advance of the hurricane even coming in to the Corpus Christi area, members of the president's cabinet and the president himself were in contact with me and my office, preparing for this catastrophe that was coming our way. At every step of the way, as the hurricane came across the shore, as the flooding began in Houston, Texas, the president and his cabinet remain in constant contact with me and my staff. And they all had one thing to say: Texas, what do you need? How can we help? You can count on us. What I've learned is we can count on the President of the United States and his staff for helping Texas. Texas has been tested, but our response to this challenge has been made much more effective because of the very effective way the President and his staff has helped Texas respond to this challenge. So, Mr. President, thank you. Thank you. Welcome to Texas.
So that was Texas. And I don't know if any of you've seen the pictures of what Harvey did to Houston, where you actually have water reaching up to the bottom of highway signs, freeway signs, interstate freeway signs, which means you're seeing water at least 14, 15 feet high. The response is praise. Now, of course, some would discount that because Greg Abbott of Texas, is a pretty conservative Republican. No one's going to blame him or necessarily think that much if you're not also a conservative or a Republican. They're not going to think much of Abbott's praise for the president. They should, but they won't. Let's go to Florida, which got hit by Irma. Ask the folks in Miami, ask the folks in the Florida Keys. I think it was reported that every trailer park in the Florida Keys was overturned by Irma. But here is what Rick Scott, another Republican, not as conservative, I would say, as Mr. Abbott of Texas, here's what he had to say about the Trump response to the hurricane that hit his state.
We're working with FEMA. I can tell you the White House has been outstanding. I talked to President Trump 3 times yesterday. I talked to Administrator Brock Long with FEMA already today. I talked to him multiple times yesterday. I can tell you, I've talked to so many cabinet members. I talked to Vice President Pence yesterday. The White House and everybody at the federal level is showing up, and they are going to. My belief is they're going to show up and they're going to do everything they can.
The response has been outstanding. I believe they're going to show up and do everything they can, and there has been no report to the contrary in Florida that the federal government has failed to respond well. Now, where the president has taken a great deal of criticism is for his response to the U.S. Virgin Islands and to Puerto Rico. But the thing about U.S. Virgin Islands, that got shut down very quickly by the officials in the U.S. Virgin Islands, who basically said, man, I don't know what else these guys could do. Of course, I'm paraphrasing. In Puerto Rico, we have more problems because it is apparent that there is politics being played there, and of the worst type that doesn't even involve politicians per se, but still involves progressives. What do I mean? Let's start with the response of Puerto Rico's governor to what FEMA and the Trump administration have done in the aftermath of Hurricane Maria. What he is saying, we need to do a lot more in order for us to get out of the emergency. That's what Puerto Rican Governor Ricardo Rossello said. He said that in San Juan. But the other thing that's also true is that the administration, speaking of the Trump administration, has answered and complied with our petitions in an expedited manner. Wow. Wow. He has no criticism of Donald Trump. Yeah, we need to do a lot more. What does he mean by that? What does he mean by that? He mentioned something that was very interesting. Or rather, the article mentioned something interesting. CNN reporting at least half of all bank branches remain shuttered, in part because they can't get enough armored trucks with gas or truck drivers to deliver cash safely. Well, they don't have enough truck drivers for... Okay, wait a minute. Hold that thought and listen to Carmen Yulín Diaz, I think that's her name, who wants to just savage the president regarding the response. This is the mayor of San Juan, Puerto Rico.
Listen to this. I am very satisfied. I know it's a hard storm to recover from, but the amount of progress that's been made, and I really would appreciate any support that we get. I know it is really a good news story in terms of our ability to reach people and the limited number of deaths that have taken place in such a devastating hurricane.
Ed Mayor.
Well, maybe from where she's standing, it's a good news story. When you're drinking from a creek, it's not a good news story. When you don't have food for a baby, it's not a good news story. When you have to pull people down from their buildings, because I'm sorry, but that really upsets me and frustrates me. You know, I would ask her to come down here and visit the towns, and then make a statement like that, which frankly it is an irresponsible statement, and it contrasts with the statements of support that I have been getting since yesterday when I got that call from the White House. This is not a good news story. This is a people are dying story. This is a life or death story. There's a truckload of stuff that cannot be taken to people's story. This is a story of a devastation that continues to worsen.
Wait a minute. Truckload of stuff that can't be taken to people's story? Wait a minute. We just heard from CNN in their written article that we're having an issue with truck drivers. And now we're saying we have an issue with truckloads of things being delivered. And here is a report filed by David Bignot. I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. And here's what he said on the 30th of September, sitting in Puerto Rico.
This is unbelievable. So we're at the port here in San Juan, and we wanted to see where's the food, the supplies, everything that's needed. We got here, and here's what we were told. There are more than 3,000 shipping containers here at the port, which are just sitting here. It's got everything they need. I literally said to somebody, what's on there? And they said, whatever you need, emergency supplies, anything that a grocery store would need. But it's just sitting here. The reason why? People aren't showing up to pick it up. The people who run the port say we've got guys in line ready to put these on a truck, but nobody's showing up. The governor of Puerto Rico says they're having trouble reaching the truck drivers. Maybe their homes are destroyed.
They're having trouble reaching the truck drivers. Why would that be the case? Help me understand why that would be the case. CNN filed a story. Puerto Rico aid is trapped in thousands of shipping containers. Oh, really? Isn't that just what we just heard on the clip? A mountain of food, water, and other vital supplies has arrived in Puerto Rico's main port of San Juan, but a shortage of truckers and the island's devastated infrastructure are making it tough to move aid to where it's needed most. At least 10,000 containers, food, water, medicine, were sitting Thursday at the San Juan port. Part of the reason for the distribution backlog is that only 20% of truck drivers have reported back to work since Hurricane Maria swept through. What? When we say we don't have truck drivers, we mean that we have not been able to contact them. Excuse me? As of the 3,000 containers that have been sent to San Juan ports as of Wednesday of last week, only 4%? 4%. Now, why is it that you can't reach the truck drivers? Anybody ever asked that question? Because there's a strike. And they were on strike. The truck drivers were on strike for not being paid even before the hurricane hit. Guys, let me see if I can break this down and make this extremely clear to you. The people who are determined to bring down the current administration do not care what they have to do or how they have to do it in order to achieve their ends. You want to go after the president. The only thing the president should have to do is get the aid to the port But when 4 out of 5 truck drivers have decided they can't be contacted, no, hold on. If it was 1 out of 5, I could say, well, you know, they're having their own problems and this, that, and the other. But 80%, you can't reach 80% because they're on strike. Because their progressive ideology, that's what a union does. See, you don't understand. Unions love disasters. If they can't cause them, they want to exploit them because they want to make sure you feel the pain that is associated when they're not delivering whatever it is you need. And therefore, when you're in trouble, it makes their hand, which they choose to play, a little bit stronger. It happens with teachers. They go on strike. They don't go on strike when school's not in session. They want to make sure school days are missed. They want to put pressure not only on parents who have to make other arrangements, but they have to put pressure on schools and the government, which normally pays schools by student day. And if the teachers aren't there, it's difficult for the students to be there because there's no one to supervise them, and therefore they stay home. And you mess up the whole distribution system of money from the taxpayer wallet to the schools. So what do I have here? Here are the consistent things that I have. In the wake of natural disasters in Texas, in Florida, I didn't even mention that the Democrat governor of Louisiana had nothing but praise for the Trump administration's response to the hurricane. The governor of Puerto Rico praising the response, saying, when we speak, they respond. When we ask, they respond, and they do so in an expedited manner. And then we have this little chica, Carmen Yulín Cruz. I think I said her name was Diaz. It's not Diaz, it's Cruz. Saying it's not a good news story, but even she messed up and let the cat out of the bag as to why. I got a truckload of stuff that's not getting delivered. What's that got to do with Donald Trump? Your truck drivers have decided to go on strike, and they've stayed on strike even though the hurricane has paralyzed this place, and you have people suffering because you don't have truck drivers, 80% of whom are magically beyond. Here's the thing. If I'm a truck driver in a place that's just been hit, and I find out that the supplies are sitting there at the port waiting for delivery, and I care about my fellow Puerto Ricans, I'm going to go drive my truck. If there's any way possible to get to that port and get to those shipping containers and move them, I'm not going to even wait. I don't need to be called unless I'm a union guy. Isn't that special? So you need to understand what's really, really going on here. Donald Trump is the same person after every hurricane disaster. What do you need? We're here to make sure you get it. We're making sure Congress steps up and provides the funding, and we're doing what we can to put boots on the ground where needed to make sure this happens. What do you need? He was that way in Texas. He was that way in Florida. He was that way in Louisiana. He's that way in the U.S. Virgin Islands. And he's been the exact same guy representing the will of the American people, because that's how the American people think. Are you in trouble and you're a fellow citizen? What do you need? Tell me what I can do. Donald Trump is simply, again, representing the American people and the way that they see things. Get them the help they need. But in Puerto Rico, somebody's playing politics. The liberal, progressive, crying the blues mayor of San Juan, who cries about a lack of aid even while she's standing in front of pallets of aid. That was astonishing to me. we're dying here, then get your truckers off their behinds and have them deliver the supplies that the American people and others have provided, that the American government has made sure that you receive. 3,000 shipping containers? And they're just sitting there. Please explain to me how this has anything to do with Donald Trump. It does not. It does not. What it does have something to do with are tremendous levels of political animus willing to allow people to suffer simply to make a political president administration, make that administration fail, to color it as negative in the eyes of America. They've even tried to make this a race thing. Donald Trump doesn't like brown people. 75% of Puerto Rico is white. This is not what you do to go after. Let me help you out with this. The percentage of Puerto Rico that is white is higher than the percentage of all of the U.S. that is white. Do you hear me? How can this be a race story? It's not. How can this be a lack of aid story? It's not. How can this be a lack of response story? It's not. Jennifer Lopez, shut your large round behind up. He's not failing Puerto Rico. You are making ignorance fashionable, or trying to. At some point in time, the American people need to look at their friends on the Democrat side, on the progressive side, and just ask themselves, how big a lie are you guys willing to tell just to get your way politically? Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinkin'. We'll be back right after this. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinkin', here on the dominant force of internet conservatism, TalkAmericaRadio.us, also WDDQ, Talk 92.1 FM in Valdosta, Georgia, WJHC, Talk 107.5 in North Florida, FreedomInAmericaRadio.com, and WLBB News Talk AM 1330 in Carrollton, Georgia. Continuing with the theme of Donald Trump, Master and Commander, let's turn our attention to foreign affairs. Donald Trump is actually doing something very differently than the current administration, in some ways very differently than the prior two administrations. George W. Bush definitely came across as a strong leader within the early part of his first term, responding to the attacks on 9/11. He didn't always come across as a strong commander throughout his 8 years, as he had to be convinced that a surge was necessary to close out and seal off victory, at least during his presidency, of the war in Iraq. Barack Obama, of course, did nothing to advance American leadership in the world. He did a lot to fan American outrage, particularly in the Middle East and Persian Gulf region, with his indiscriminate use of drones to kill people, sometimes indiscriminately. Donald Trump has done things much differently, and he has made it very clear that America is back to what you are used to seeing, that we associate so much with Kennedy's speech, his inaugural. Ask not what you can do, what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. We will bear any burden, support any friend, oppose any foe, for the cause of liberty. Those type of things, which basically say the American nation is different from the other nations in the world. The U.S. is not going to wait for you to come up with your best idea the United States is ready to lead on its own ideals. Donald Trump recently spoke, last month it was, at the United Nations. And he expressed a similar sentiment. He's not as articulate as John Kennedy. Of course, when he has a prepared speech, he doesn't do as badly as he used to. But he put these things out there by taking aim at specific U.S. adversaries. For example, Iran, North Korea, and Venezuela. Venezuela is an adversary, by the way, an ideological adversary, much different than Iran and North Korea. They would love the opportunity, at least if you listen to their rhetoric, to be military adversaries, although they would be wiped off the map. Venezuela is different. But this is what Donald Trump had to say at the UN during his speech regarding that trio.
We can no longer be taken advantage of or enter into a one-sided deal where the United States gets nothing in return. The United States has great strength and patience, but if it is forced to defend itself or its allies, we will have no choice but to totally destroy North Korea. Rocket Man is on a suicide mission for himself and for his regime. The United States is ready, willing, and able, but hopefully this will not be necessary. That's what the United Nations is all about. The Iranian government masks a corrupt dictatorship behind the false guise of a democracy. The Iran deal was one of the worst and most one-sided transactions the United States has ever entered into. Frankly, that deal is an embarrassment to the United States, and I don't think you've heard the last of it. It is time for the entire world to join us in demanding that Iran's government end its pursuit of death and destruction. The Venezuelan people are starving, and their country is collapsing. Their democratic institutions are being destroyed. This situation is completely unacceptable, and we cannot stand by and watch. As a responsible neighbor and friend, we and all others have a goal. That goal is to help them regain their freedom, recover their country, and restore their democracy. In America, we seek stronger ties of business and trade with all nations of goodwill. But this trade must be fair and it must be reciprocal. And our great middle class, once the bedrock of American prosperity, was forgotten and left behind. But they are forgotten no more, and they will never be forgotten again.
That is about as direct and powerful a statement as you can make in a room full of enemies. And make no mistake, the United States has very few friends at the United Nations. We just pay for them to hang out and be opposed to us on U.S. soil. Find that interesting. But that is what we do. Donald Trump was not in any way, shape, or form done with Venezuela with that statement. And it is important that Donald Trump actually single out Venezuela, because what they have done is horrific to their population. And he called them out specifically for the ideology that has brought them to ruin.
Peace and prosperity for all of our people and all of our neighbors. I ask every country represented here today to be prepared to do more to address this very real crisis. We call for the full restoration of democracy and political freedoms in Venezuela. The problem in Venezuela is not that socialism has been poorly implemented, but that socialism has been faithfully implemented. From the Soviet Union to Cuba to Venezuela, wherever true socialism or communism has been adopted, it has delivered anguish and devastation and failure. Those who preach the tenets of these discredited ideologies only contribute to the continued suffering of the people who live under these cruel systems. America stands with every person living under a brutal regime.
Wow. Again, clear statements, bold statements, and quite frankly, very American statements. We stand with those who do not want to be living in a tyrannical state. Now, I already know the progressives and those who are black in skin color only, those who I call Biscos, who want to talk about oppression in the United States. They have no idea what they're talking about. Well, the police are shooting people in the street. They're shooting more white people than they are of you. White people have many more interactions than you do with the police, and it is not explained, the increase in number or the disparity is not explained by the fact that there are 5 people of white descent in this country for every one of black descent. The numbers are skewed more toward whites having encounters with the police and therefore more violence at the hands of police and more deaths. You just don't want to hear that. There's no oppression in the United States. You want oppression? Carry your little narrow behind to Venezuela and see if you can eat something and then come back. And when you try to eat something, tell us what happens. Carry your behind to Spain and see what they're doing to those in Catalan who want to be independent and how they are unleashing their police to beat people for seeking to vote for their independence, but you want to talk about oppression here. Get out of here with that nonsense. It's nonsense. Turning attention back to North Korea, whom Donald Trump talked about in his speech. They've been working on China to take care of North Korea for quite some time. And back in July, the Times of Oman, I believe, published this report regarding Trump's efforts with respect to China.
The United States' ambassador to the United Nations says Washington will crank up pressure on Beijing to ensure that it implements sanctions against Pyongyang over its missile tests. U.S. Ambassador Nikki Haley says while Washington wants to avoid conflict, it is also determined to stop North Korea's nuclear drive. China is North Korea's main ally. Haley says, quote, "We're going to push hard against China because 90% of the trade that happens with North Korea is from China. And so while they have been helpful, they need to do more." The Trump administration has shown signs of giving up on Beijing. U.S. President Donald Trump raised eyebrows last month with a tweet concluding that China's efforts had not worked out. Washington recently slapped sanctions on a Chinese bank linked to North Korea and infuriated Beijing with an announcement of a new arms sale to Taiwan.
That was in July. Trump talking tough again. And everybody is nervous when Trump talks tough. Why? That's a good question. The truth of the matter is this. His tough talk on China is working. Fox News actually filed a report regarding this a few days back. China closes North Korean businesses. North Korea allegedly swells army to fight U.S. Bump the thing that comes after the semicolon. Deal with that first part. China, this past Thursday, ordered the closing of all North Korean businesses in the country, cutting revenue to the Hermit Kingdom from its main trading partner as tensions build globally over Kim Jong-un's missile and nuke programs. Do you understand what we're talking about here? China is controlling North Korea. China does 90% of North Korea's business, their main trading partner, 90%. And now they're closing businesses because despite what they've said to the contrary, they have no interest in North Korea riling the United States of America. They're not interested in that. And now they're taking the very action that people said. All the pundits said, well, we need China to step up and deal with North Korea. Well, guess what? And as Donald Trump correctly said, he's correct too many times. 25 years of an appeasement policy with North Korea failed. Bill Clinton appeased North Korea. That didn't get us anything. George W. Bush did nothing with North Korea. Look where that got us. Barack Obama appeased North Korea, and that allowed them to, that 25 years of inactivity, and it goes back further than that, but a quarter century of appeasement or ignoring the problem have got us to the point where North Korea is lobbing missiles into the Sea of Japan on an increasingly frequent basis. And Donald Trump has reversed the rhetoric, and all of a sudden, China, whom everybody was afraid of with respect to North Korea, is actually starting to control North Korea. Barack Obama couldn't get that to happen. George Bush didn't get that to happen. Bill Clinton didn't get that to happen. Bush 41 didn't make that happen. Reagan didn't make that happen. Carter didn't make that happen. Ford wasn't around long enough to make it happen. And Nixon started all this foolishness in the first place. Donald Trump is kicking butt and taking names. And if you got a problem with that, I can't help you. But he is doing the will of the American people. The American people believe they should lead the world, not because they're better than the rest of the world, but because their ideals resonate with free people throughout the world. And I'm going to turn this over to my good friend Ron Edwards, and after that we'll be back with hour 2 of Black Man Thinking.
The plots, plans, and tricks to overthrow America. Hello, I'm Ron Edwards on today's page from the Edwards Notebook. In American society today, to say stuff has hit the fan is an enormous understatement. When I observe everything ranging from Trump hating, American flag disrespecting, oppressed multimillionaire athletes kneeling, sitting, or remaining in their locker room during the national anthem, or an NFL commissioner who didn't even allow Dallas Cowboy football players to wear patches to honor police officers slain while protecting America, and police haters, yet supports anti-flag protests. When I witness the ongoing college campus protests against freedom of expression, unless those speaking hate America and want to overthrow our republic and replace capitalism with communism. When you read about the growing support for bigoted anti-Christian activity, while allowing the teaching of Islam in government schools, or the effort to flood our media and public discourse with never-ending complaints about racism, oppression, and Americanism, it is an orchestrated movement by Antifa groups to accomplish a complete doing away with our constitutionally limited form of government. Wake up, America. The enemy is here. I'm Ron Edwards.
Sponsored by the Tri-County Liberty Coalition.
I have a dream. One day, this nation will rise up, live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.
Black Men Thinkin.
Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. The only way they can inherit the freedom we have known is if we fight for it, protect it, defend it, and then hand it to them with the well-taught lessons of how they in their lifetime must do the same.
Black Men Thinkin.
Anytime you throw your weight behind a political party that controls 2/3 of the government, and that party can't keep the promise that it made to you during election time, and you are dumb enough to walk around continuing to identify yourself with that party, you're not only a chump, but you're a traitor to your race.
Black Men Thinkin.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. And this idea that government is beholden to the people, that it has no other source of power except the sovereign people, is still the newest and the most unique idea in all the long history of man's relation to man. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Black Men Thinkin.
In this present crisis, government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem.
Black Men Thinkin.
Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinking, here on Dominant Force and Internet Conservatism. That would be talkradio.us. Also, WDDQ Talk 92.1 FM in Valdosta, Georgia. WJHC Talk 107.5 in North Florida. Freedom in AmericaRadio.com, and WLBB News Talk AM 1330 in Carrollton, Georgia. I'm going to continue with the theme because, I'm sorry, it's just working for me tonight. Donald Trump, master and commander. And now let's talk about his domination of an inactive Congress. Let's start with Speaker Paul Ryan. You may remember during the campaign, Paul Ryan was nowhere near being anyone who was in support of Donald Trump. He exposed himself, quite honestly, as being well to the left of Donald Trump, and also somewhat left, and noticeably so, of the American electorate, even though he is listed among those in the Republican Party. You can go back and look. The election reveals Paul Ryan to be the worst speaker in U.S. history. And that was dealing with his handling of the presidential election. Trying to weigh in while not trying to weigh in. He was called ineffective. Donald Trump, even before the election, less than a month before the election, slammed him for his disloyalty, for his not being an enthusiastic supporter of the Republican ticket. These are the things that you have to remember. And then afterward, on the 9th of November, after the election, the same man that Donald Trump called weak and ineffective, after wringing his hands about whether or not Donald Trump would have an impact on the GOP House majority, he thanked Trump for delivering a Republican Congress. He shouldn't have thanked Trump for that. What he should have thanked Trump for, which he later acknowledged, is Trump actually has an understanding of what the issue is for the American people. He articulated it. He was on it like a crow on a June bug. He stayed on that message. And it resonated. And now the most interesting part is, now that he's in office, he hasn't changed his message. And his actions follow the message. As a result, Paul Ryan, who used to be a rising star and considered one of the brightest people in Congress, has now been exposed as someone who cannot wrangle a GOP majority to enact the agenda of someone who won the electoral vote. Donald Trump has stated, articulated, and sought to implement the agenda that the American electorate prefers. However, Paul Ryan can't seem to, as Speaker of the House, move either the House or the Republican majority within it to move that agenda. Quite a contrast from the Speaker who took power 22 years ago. And that was Newt Gingrich, who, having worked together with his Republican colleagues, came up, while they were in the minority, came up with a plan called the Contract with America. They sold that to the American people. They campaigned on it, and then they, within 100 days, implemented the majority of that agenda and put it on Bill Clinton's reluctant desk to be signed into law. Paul Ryan has watched what's going on in Congress and how Congress and the federal government has been governing against the will of the American people since 2010. He has an opportunity to reverse all that he said he did not like from the prior administration, and here we are. The only thing he's been able to get was a tepid vote to repeal and replace, though the people never voted for replacement, a tepid vote in favor of repeal and replacing Obamacare. That's all he's done in 9 months. 9 months. And he can't make it happen. Nevertheless, we have no different situation regarding what Trump has done to the leader of the Republican Party in the Senate. Now, remember something about Paul Ryan. Paul Ryan is perpetually on the clock now because everybody's looking at Paul Ryan and saying, you have not identified a different strategy, a different agenda, a different way forward for the American people than the president has articulated. And you are a Republican, he is a Republican, the majority of the Congress, the House of Representatives, are Republicans. Please explain to me why you cannot form a simple majority, since you have the majority, and move this legislation forward. Why are you having to do things like cancel votes on repealing Obamacare unless you're not actually trying to do that? Yeah. On the Senate side, you're seeing something that to me is remarkable, and that is the exposure, the simultaneous exposure and isolation of Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell proved to be even less effective with respect to the repeal of Obamacare that the Senate voted on before the election, passed before the election. And he couldn't get those same votes to show up after the inauguration. Really? How is that? Well, it's John McCain's fault. No, John McCain is one senator, and he's never been reliable. Not for conservative causes, not even for Republican causes. I don't even know how he got to be or remain in the Republican Party. Should have thrown him out years ago. Mitch McConnell has shown himself to be no less ineffective than Paul Ryan is as Speaker of the House. And what is interesting, or what was interesting, was the special election for the GOP primary for senator in Alabama, where McConnell and also Donald Trump went all in for McConnell's preferred candidate, which is Luther Strange, against Judge Roy Moore, who I believe had been the Chief Justice of the Alabama Supreme Court. And they published falsehoods, did Mitch McConnell and his effective workers, about Judge Roy Moore, saying that he did not support the Second Amendment and things of that nature, which is just not true. And they outspent him. They put money, they put lies, they put everything on the line, and for reasons that I think are almost pure genius, Donald Trump said, okay, I'll back your guy. I'll back your guy. And I'll be sincere in backing him. I don't believe Donald Trump ever really thought that Luther Strange was going to win. I don't think he believed that. But I do know this. By him backing Luther Strange, he put Mitch McConnell in a no-win situation regarding any opposition to the Trump agenda. If I back your boy and he wins, particularly since he was not winning before I got involved and started backing him, you owe me, Mitch. If I back your boy and he loses, Mitch, you can't deliver. You can't deliver legislation. You can't even pick a good candidate. Maybe you should let me drive this train for a while. Why are you still Senate Majority Leader if you can't lead a Senate majority? If you don't even understand the electorate well enough to get the right candidate in place to keep the Senate majority? Why is that? And not an hour or so after the election that Luther Strange lost and Judge Roy Moore won, Donald Trump jumped off the Luther Strange ride and got on the Judge Roy Moore boat and told him to go win it in December, which is when the actual general election will occur in Alabama for that Senate seat. So what is it that McConnell has to show for being Senate Majority Leader? The whole nation is actually looking for the Trump agenda to move. And they now recognize Trump's not the reason it's not moving. They are looking at two people in particular, and that is Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell. And what is even more interesting to me is just how ineffective Donald Trump has made the mainstream press in protecting either McConnell or Ryan. He's bypassed their message. He's gone over their heads directly to the American people, and he has made his case, and they are following his lead and accepting his argument. Well, that's because they're just Trump supporters. He's got them brainwashed. You don't get it. Trump's not leading the American people. He's following them. He's saying the things that they have been saying. And he's standing for the very things that they have wanted to see done for the last 8 years, or at least the last 7, since 2010, when Obamacare became law through some interesting parliamentary shenanigans. The American people are with Donald Trump because he is the first politician in quite some time who actually said he was with them, and the first elected official in an even longer time to actually put his energies into seeking to deliver upon the promises that he made during his campaign. Now, I understand that there are those who are out there calling Trump a racist with no proof. What did he say about Charlottesville? What did he say after Charlottesville? How he's dogging Puerto Rico? How's he dogging Puerto Rico? Everywhere those on the ground are involved with hurricane relief, they praise the Trump administration for how they behave. Well, what about that mayor in San Juan? And there's another mayor in Puerto Rico who thinks she's a nut because just as Donald Trump said, she's been invited to the meetings with FEMA and she refuses to show up so she can get in front of another CNN camera and talk smack. But if she was really concerned about the welfare of her people and the federal government was showing up holding meetings about how they wanted to help the recovery, how come you're not there? At least go there and then go talk smack about what they're not doing after you've been to the meeting, but you're not doing that. And Donald Trump is hitting her. He's destroying her. And the truth that is coming out in the background, well, wait a minute. And some of the background is provided by her. We need aid. And you're standing in front of pallets of aid? We need aid. And there's 3,000 shipping containers in your port? Mayor of San Juan? Well, we're having a problem with the truck drivers are unionized folks in your country, 80% of whom have decided they're not going to go to work. And we don't know how many of the other 20% that you have been able to reach. We don't know how many of them are deciding to come to work. All we know is that the very thing that you say you need is sitting in your port, not being delivered, and your feud with Donald Trump is backfiring because he's standing his ground, because he knows what he's doing. He knows the steps that he's taking. The governor of Puerto Rico has nothing bad to say about him. The other mayors in Puerto Rico don't seem to have anything bad to say about him. You seem to have something bad to say about him, and you've been exposed as a liar. And the reason you're exposed as a liar is because the American press has been unable to protect you. They want to make you a darling. They want someone to criticize the president and make him look bad. Of course they do. That's what these are the same people who kept predicting that Hillary would win. But you're not credible. And you're getting hit. Because Donald Trump is in control of the agenda with the national legislature and the mainstream press. The master and commander is dominating not only the political machine, but the information machine. Stanley, Levy, Black Man Thinkin. We'll be back right after this. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinking, here on the dominant force of internet conservatism, TalkAmericaRadio.us, also WDDQ, Talk 92.1 FM in Valdosta, Georgia, WJHC, Talk 107.5 in North Florida, FreedomInAmericaRadio.com, and WLBB News Talk, AM 1330 in Carrollton, Georgia. Continuing on the theme of Donald Trump, Master and Commander, which is, in my opinion, my first full-blown, I wouldn't call it endorsement of Donald Trump, but it's kind of acknowledging what the man has been able to accomplish as President of the United States in taking control of the American agenda, wresting it away from the political establishment and the mainstream media, and turning it into results that actually resonate and matter with the American people. Looking now, let's talk about the one thing where it is most obvious that Trump is making a difference, and the reason it's most obvious, it It is the thing about which the political establishment and the mainstream press are most silent, and that is the economy. Now, Barack Obama made a big deal out of trying to talk about his record, but the one thing that he never talked about was GDP, or gross domestic product growth. He never talked about growth in the economy. He talked about how it might grow, how certain things he did or hoped to do would maybe support it growing, but he never talked about how it was growing during his administration. If you wonder why...
On April 28, 2016, the United States Commerce Department made the historic announcement that the gross domestic product, or GDP, grew at an anemic rate of a paltry 0.5%. That followed a pale fourth quarter advance of 1.4%. This puts Barack Obama on track for about a 1.5% for his 8-year term, and it gives him the dubious distinction of having been the first U.S. president in history not to see a single year of 3% GDP growth. In comparison, President Ronald Reagan oversaw a real annual GDP growth rate of 3.5%, more than double that of Obama, whose economic record is on track to rank the fourth worst of any president in history. But keep in mind, these statistics are coming from the Obama administration, and there are plenty of ways to cook the books, so to speak. Even with numerous gourmet economic chefs working overtime, trying to find something redeemable about Obama's economic record, this is the best they can do? Makes me wonder, is it possible that someday historians will look back and determine that the record of this current Obama nation was the worst in history? Ouch.
The question is not, will history look back? He's already in the books. Not 1 year of 3% annual GDP growth. The first time any United States president, and there were 43 of them before him, the first time anyone could not get 3% growth during their term. Heck, the Great Depression happened, and even Franklin Roosevelt was able to get 3% GDP growth during his time in office, but not Barack Hussein Obama. I find that interesting. By comparison, you have this during the early part of the current administration with Donald Trump.
The U.S. economy is experiencing its strongest growth since early 2015. According to the Department of Commerce, the gross domestic product rose 3% in the second quarter. The department said increased consumer spending was the main reason for the growth. That figure is up about 0.5% from an earlier estimate for the second quarter. It's also up nearly 2% from the beginning of this year. President Donald Trump's administration has set a goal of 3% economic growth for the year, but some economists have said that's unlikely. According to MarketWatch, the last time the U.S. saw 2 quarters of economic growth above 3% was in 2014. A senior economic advisor at PNC Financial Services Group told the Washington Post, quote, "We're still in the slow lane economy. The 3% growth the president talked about is not in sight." For United News International, I'm Matt Paul.
So you get the normal thing with Donald Trump and the economy. Well, it's doing well, but he can't keep it up. It's doing well, but we can't see it. Of course, the fact that the stock market is still hitting record high numbers, and I personally discount that because I really don't give a rat's behind about company valuations when you don't have people working. You had that going on during the Barack Obama administration. The stock market hitting new highs when you had more than 90 and sometimes 100 million people no longer in the workforce. Remember, there's only 315 million or so people in the United States to begin with. For a workforce to be missing 101 million people, I don't exactly know why the stock market is making money. It's definitely not making money using U.S. labor. What are they doing? How are they making money? And how is that a measure of a healthy economy, a high stock market with nobody working? It's not. Now, the truth of the matter is Barack Obama oversaw the lowest labor force participation rate since the Carter administration. We're talking about 40 years worth of low. And the truth of the matter is the jury is still out, of course, on Donald Trump, who's only been in office for going on 9 months now. But a million private sector jobs are already in the books. He's already surpassed that number. Will it last? Time will tell. He hit 3%. To his credit, let's be honest, Barack Obama hit 3 and sometimes 4% or higher a few times during his administration. And then he followed up with some horrific quarters. And as a result, he never got to 3% in a year. Donald Trump, will he get there? We don't know. The third quarter just ended. Second quarter hit 3%. The question is, when we get the numbers for the third quarter, which just ended, will he still be on pace? Will he get a second consecutive quarter of 3%? If he does, despite the hurricanes, that would be interesting. I don't know if it's going to happen. I do think he'll probably hit it in the fourth quarter as people start putting in the effort to recover from the hurricanes, but that's a different story. The other thing that needs to happen, and if it happens before the end of the year, it should have happened already, in my opinion, provided you had had an effective Speaker of the House and an effective Senate Majority Leader, would have been the tax reform that Donald Trump campaigned for. Because that would have unleashed a torrent of capital into the private sector, which would have meant people would have been going out of their way to find ways to make more money with the money that they now had. The additional funds found money that they had earned that the government was no longer taking from them. So to get to that number without that is going to be more difficult. But he hit 3.25% without having tax reform. This is a great news story that the news media in the United States has chosen to overlook so that we can talk about little sorry mayors in San Juan, Puerto Rico, who want to lie about what's going on with hurricane responses from the Trump administration. This is why we still want to talk about people taking a knee, which is ridiculous, in the NFL. That's still news. That Colin Kaepernick doesn't have a job is somehow still news. But you're not talking about the economy. Labor force participation has not improved significantly yet, but the bleeding seems to have stopped. It's holding steady just under 63% and has for at least the last 3 months. If it breaks 63% and doesn't go back down, but keeps heading up, you better watch out. This is going to be a very hot economy. And let me say this unequivocally. If Donald Trump can get the United States economy moving in the right direction and actually hit the GDP targets he has set, he's actually said he wants to hit 4%. If that is the case, the likelihood that he would not be reelected if he were breathing, extremely low. It's almost a guarantee. It would be the same formula that Ronald Reagan rode into his second term, simply putting America back to work. So when you look at this, Donald Trump has been master and commander of the U.S. economy that is doing so much to buoy the national spirit, but it's being done and nobody wants to talk about it in the media. What they want to talk about doesn't matter. They want to talk about divisions. And let me be clear on something. I'm not a big fan of all this division or divisiveness talk, because the division is not among Americans, unless you just count anybody who has citizenship as an American, and I know exactly what I'm saying. The question is, do you think like an American? LeBron James does not think like an American. Steph Curry does not think like an American. He just happens to be one by birth. Both of them fall into that category. But the ideals of America, they don't embrace those. They don't even understand them. I would dare say they don't know what they are. But the American people do. And that's why when you take a knee, you get booed. When you take a knee during the national anthem, or decide to take a knee instead of standing for the American flag, you get problems with the American people, because they still by and large do understand what the values and the ethic of the American nation is. Back to the economy. Donald Trump, with zero help from Congress, they haven't passed a doggone thing that's really going to help the economy, in my opinion, is actually seeing jobs get created, actually seeing a more positive job environment, and has already seen 3% GDP growth in a quarter. Can he continue that? We'll have to see. But the next quarter GDP report, which should be coming out not very long, he's doing what he said he was going to do, and the effects are already beginning to be felt. And he's not even 9 months into his first term. He's doing work for the American economy. He's doing work for the American people. And he's doing just what he said he would. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinkin', will be back right after this. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinkin', here on the dominant force in internet conservatism, TalkAmericaRadio.us, also WDDQ Talk 92.1 FM in Valdosta, Georgia, WJHC Talk 107.5 in North Florida, FreedomInAmericaRadio.com, and WLBB News Talk AM 1330 in Carrollton, Georgia. Final segment of the show, and I'm not surprised, but I am a little bit to say that I continue with the theme of Donald Trump, master and commander. And the things that we talked about, or I spoke of, is he's taken on the progressivism in major sports. He's humbled the NFL, and he's hobbled the NBA with respect to anthem protests and flag protests. He's looked at the concerns of Americans who are facing natural disasters, and his response has been typically American, which is, you're hurting, you're my people, how can I help? He's reasserted the United States at the forefront of the world in foreign affairs, going so far as to boldly call out adversaries of the United States and manipulating frenemies like China to do the things that people have been trying to get them to do with respect to North Korea for more than a quarter century. He's taken on the political establishment, and he has exposed them, showing them as ineffective, not listening to the American people, and apparently incapable of leadership or governance. He said that the economy needed to be changed so that the American people would not be left behind, the great middle class that people always talk about. And slowly, he is actually bringing that to fruition. I say slowly because I remember the government does not create jobs that matter. But they can get out of the way for those who do create jobs that matter. Economic growth is up. Employment is at its lowest measured point in some time, and for blacks it's at the lowest point in 17 years. For those who care about black unemployment. I'm among them. And now we come back to where this all started, which was a statement which became a slogan, which is "Make America Great Again." What I like about that slogan at this point in time is, despite making it an obvious target, well, when was America ever great? When was the last time America was great? It has stood. It has stood because it struck a chord with the majority of the American people. Because they recognize that under the influences of progressivism, we're slipping as a nation. We should be in places that we had not been and were not, and were moving further away from under the Barack Obama administration. Barack Obama was causing the nation to decline and happily managing that decline economically, militarily, diplomatically, in all phases of U.S. engagement, domestic and foreign. He was doing what he could to lessen the United States of America. Donald Trump just stepped in and said, I don't think the people want to be less. I don't think they want to be part of the great world society that they don't necessarily think is so great. If they did, people would not be coming to America in the numbers that they were, looking for opportunity, better lives. A young black gentleman, Leo Dunson, actually put out a little, to me it's kind of hokey, but a rap song about the whole concept, and it makes some interesting points regarding the whole idea of making America great.
Gotta make America great again. We gotta make America great again. We gotta make America great again. We gotta make America. Republicans and Democrats have failed us. We don't need no more career politicians. All talk, no action politicians. They run for office under FBI investigation. They just trying to get elected. These lightweights protest at my rally and get punched in the face. All lives matter, not just a black face. In the land of the free, Americans my race. Americans my culture, and I want to see it be great. I want us united in the United States. I don't care if you gay, but no, I'm straight. So let me practice my religion, free of constraints, free of government regulation and oversight. To bear my arms is my Second Amendment right. I once voted for hope, I once voted for change. Now I'm voting to make America great. We gotta make America great again. We gotta make America great again. We gotta make America great again. We gotta make America, make America. We gotta make America great again. We gotta make America great again. We gotta make America great again. We gotta make America.
The kind of stuff that comes out during election season, hokey little songs. But the point is clear, and it stands up, and different things were said in there talking about exactly what America wants. We don't want people always questioning the right to bear arms. We don't want people telling us that Christianity is some type of dirty religion that should not be practiced. That's not what America's into. That's not what it cares about. You did not hear the American nation going up in arms about pulling out of the Paris Accords for climate change, because that was not something the American people ever wanted. So what does it mean to make America great again? First of all, you have to shine the light of Americanism on the left. That's what you're going to have to do. Because where you go on the left, I find it fascinating that the people who are most vocal about racism in America are those on the left, white and particularly black, who can't talk about anything else but race. It is apparent that leftist blacks are racist. It is obvious. And the first proof of their racism is their denial that they can even be racist. The second proof of their racism is the hypocritical stance of criticizing whites for hating blacks, but they themselves killing more blacks and everybody else in the United States. Being the most criminal demographic in the United States, which is not what blacks were known for before the Democrats changed their minds about who they were. When you shine the light of Americanism on things, stuff changes. Slavery could only last for 90 years because the light of Americanism was too bright for it. Oh yeah, but those founders, they had slaves. Thomas Jefferson and George Washington got rid of slaves as soon as they can, or they could, and they ended up passing laws not to allow them to even free their slaves after death. That's not to say there's no racism in America. There would have been racism in America no matter who the dominant race was. That is the interesting thing. The fact that so many blacks are so racist only tells us what would have happened had they been the majority. If you really want to know what happens to people when blacks are in the majority, look at South Africa. And look at what's happening to the white minority there. They are under physical siege from the black majority. It would have been no different in America had the majority been black. The only thing that would have changed were the skin colors of those called oppressor and oppressed. When the truth of the matter is that America, more than any other nation, works to break down both those walls and labels and have them apply to no one. I dare say that only in America can someone still write the own script of their life on their terms. Doesn't mean they don't have to put in effort. Doesn't mean they won't have opposition. But nobody can make you fail in the United States. You just have to give up trying. You have to shine that light of Americanism on people. That this is a can-do place for those who can do, and those who have decided that failure will not be their destination. Make America Great Again is a shot across the bow to elitists and globalists who actually believe that they are either better than the American people or that the American people should not have their freedom because they don't like the way they would use it. That's a problem that needs to be opposed. And the slogan, Make America Great Again, when America was at her greatest, elitists, globalists, and other tyrants had problems. Because the American people, driven by that American ethic and those values that are described and enshrined in the Declaration of Independence, cannot be subjugated. And that is what elitists want. Doesn't mean we don't have elites in the United States. Just go look to Hollywood. Go look to what professional sports has become that it was never intended to become. Nobody was ever supposed to be making a living playing a game in a land of opportunity where so many things needed to be made. And what do you make? Touchdowns? Baskets? Base hits? Things that nobody can use? Things that are simply annotated and you move on from there? No, that's not what America is about. The Empire State Building, the Golden Gate Bridge, the Hoover Dam, the Grand Coulee Dam, the Tennessee Valley Authority, the Golden Gate Bridge. America is about great accomplishments that change people's lives, and not just those who have the accomplishment, but those who benefit tangibly from what they did. And Make America Great is very good at exposing those who are anti-American, though they dwell within the borders. The athletes of the NFL have been exposed. The athletes of the NBA have been exposed. The Democrat left in Congress has been exposed. The progressives who call themselves Republicans in the Congress and in the Senate have been exposed. They are now beginning to be seen, if they are not already seen, as anti-American. Black Lives Matter has been exposed. Antifa exposed themselves by calling for violence outright. All these things are happening simply because the tagline, Make America Great Again, is something that the American people truly want to see. And they have found someone not to lead them, but to speak for them to those who do not want them to be what their ethic, what their creed, and what their values demand. The American people are a great people. Well, you're just talking about white America. No, I'm not white. I'm part of a great people. Well, you don't know how they made us suffer. I'm not suffering. I'm sorry. I'm striving. And you can't keep me from reaching my goal by telling me to worry about the skin color of somebody who's got the same problems that I do. Well, white folk got white privilege. Really? How come there's more of them poor than anybody else? Why is that? Why is it that their children sometimes find it harder to get into good colleges than people who are not considered white? Because of the regulations that have been put in place by government that favor others simply because of skin color. No. Donald Trump has made himself master and commander of the American nation not by calling people to anything other than what they were longing to hear and have been longing to hear for decades in this country. We are a great nation. We can do things that other nations cannot do. We are capable, and we are the most accomplished country that the world has ever seen. The American people are proud of their legacy. They're proud of their accomplishments. They do not want to see them diminished. They don't want to see them denigrated. They don't want to see them demeaned. And they're not unwilling to welcome anyone who's willing to play by the American rules. That doesn't mean they've always accepted everyone readily, but they've accepted everyone definitely. And that's our show. God bless you. God keep you. That is my prayer. It is my hope that you would continue to look out for those for whom you care. It is my hope that you would continue to look out for the nation that you inherited. And remember the blood that was shed that you might have it. And not give up by inaction to those who do not appreciate what you have. Do not give that up by inaction. Do not surrender by laziness what was blood bought. Do take care, and we hope to see you again. May God bless.
You've been listening to Black Man Thinkin' with your host, Stan Levy. Join Stan midnight to 2 a.m. That's late Monday night into early Tuesday morning. And find him on the web at Black Man Thinkin' without the G. That's blackmanthinkin.com.